same as Joe Biden. Um, I didn't go quite as far as he did, but and I had a degree in English and started working at the News Journal papers in Wilmington, Delaware, shortly after graduation. I went back. While I was still working, I did go back to graduate school for a couple of years, but dropped out of graduate school because it was really not as exciting as actual newspaper work. So, and the company that bought the News Journal, the Gannett Company, had a wildly different philosophy about management. They believed that managers' bonuses and salaries should be based on how diverse their management team was and how many women and minorities they were able to bring onto the team and promote. So it was a very different kind of atmosphere, even though there were some men that were still kind of beastly, but still they were easy to sort of push away. But my husband and I have been to Africa several times. I absolutely love Africa. And the first time we went, I had this book, and it was the philosophy, proverbs and things like that. And one of the proverbs, an African proverb, is, until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter. And to me, that just says why it's so important to have a multitude of voices in the room when decisions are being made, when programs are being rolled out, because you can see what happens. You can see what happens in Washington, what happened before. I mean, it was just like all white guys making laws like, what? Women will go along with us. We protect them. Well, they don't. And I just think that's a philosophy or a proverb that has guided me so often, because I think about it. I'm on a number of different boards, and I think about that, and I think, yeah, it's true. It's a better product when there are more voices. Mm-hmm. So there.
And when were you board chair for the chamber?
Gosh, I think it might have been like 2000. Yeah.
Robin?
Well, I graduated from Randolph-Macon Women's College and went to work for Reynolds Aluminum right after graduation, and stayed with Reynolds Aluminum for 10 years, then went to Pfizer Pharmaceuticals for 4 years. And in 1994, I left Pfizer to start my own consulting practice, doing the kind of work that I love, social justice, professional development. They really are twin systems. And this May, I will graduate from Villanova University with a master's degree in liberal studies. And I also will be certified in social justice and peace through Villanova University.
Wonderful. Oh, Robin, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I know somebody that great.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And how about, Robin, do you recall your board chair term?
2004. I had to go back and look at my ancestry book. I cannot tell a lie. 2004.
Okay. So we're still looking at close to 20 years between the previous female board chair and Mary Griffith Alvarado, who serves today. Mary?
Well, you guys, you ladies are a hard act to follow. And I know it's 20 years later, which to me is just amazing. And that's one of the conversations. I know it's not on Pam's list, but why it took 20 some years to have another woman in this position is very different from me. But I attended Monco. I went to Montgomery County Community College. So I haven't moved far. I've been always in this community. Actually, I graduated with business management, and I was recruited right from school to the old Strawbridge and Clothier. They had an executive development program back then, and it was a 9-month program where they recruited people. And literally, one of my teachers was Stephen Strawbridge back then. And what I learned in those 9 months, actually, I utilize in my skill set today. And I really wish the youth of today could have that. That 9-month program ingrained in me professionalism and what it is to be respectful and professional in the work area. Right from there, I stayed there with Strawbridge and Clothier for a good 8 years. Then I had my first child, and then I went to Abington Memorial Hospital, and I was their first female retail director of operations. And I stayed there for a good 8 to 10 years while overseeing a second generation family business with my mom, Personal Effects Flower and Gifts. And then in 2003 is when I started my banking career as a commercial relationship manager with Fulton Bank.
Wonderful.
So we've got a diverse group of experience and talents. And, you know, Mary, to your question, I looked back over the 20 years, and there certainly have been women on the chamber board as far back as I can see records. So I don't know whether it was just a lack of time or interest on behalf of other women, or exactly perhaps, you know, what prevented us from having another female. But it is interesting that it wasn't for a lack of participation on the board.
Yeah. Interesting.
I had several questions that I wanted to ask. I thought it would just be a nice opportunity to get your thoughts on women in business and your role as the chair. And so I guess the first that I wanted to ask is, did you have a role model or a mentor that helped you throughout your career? And would you share a little bit about them if so? Mary, can I start with you?
Sure. So I always say this, my role model, as cliche as it is, it's my mom. My mom back in the day, I think, was a trailblazer. She was a working mom. She owned 2 businesses during her career. We had a 3rd generational family. We lived in generations in one household. But also I saw my mom not only being a working mom, owning a business, but she tirelessly volunteered. So she was everything from working at volunteering at the church, Girl Scouts, Brownies, whatever. And she was able to balance it all. So to this day, she would be my role model. But my mentor is a different person, and mentorships to me are the most important things for women today. And my mentor was Ruth Harden, who Pam knows. Ruth had a very long banking career in this area. And Ruth was the one years ago who brought me into banking, brought me into my volunteerism and my place in our township and with Laurel House. So it came full circle. So I had 2 very strong women as my mentor and my role model.
They're both of those ladies, and they certainly are equally as amazing. So, Robin?
My mentor, far and away, are my ancestors. Working hard, overcoming obstacles, sticking with it. They are all values that are very important to me. Early on, right after, well, it was during college, I was working at a law office to earn extra money for school, or earn money for school. And one of my key mentors was one of the attorneys. And he always told me, Robin, be yourself. And really, that is an ideology that I have kept to this day, to be myself and be unapologetic, because whomever we are, it's going to come out who we really, really are. And if you start out just being your authentic self, you'll get a lot farther without a lot of explanation.
Definitely a good point to share. Thank you. Suzanne?
Mary, like you, my mother was she was such a volunteer, everything. I mean, we used to just traipse along behind her as she walked through the neighborhood collecting for the Heart Association, the March of Dimes, anything. And she was a person who never said no to somebody who needed something. You know, people would be coming into our house for food. They would be like, we didn't have a whole lot, but my mother would always say, well, you know, come on in, we'll just add some more water to the stew, whatever. And she was just a very generous heart, a very intelligent woman, raised all of us, but she was an inveterate reader, just constantly reading and reading to us and teaching us to read and exciting us about knowledge and things like that. So I look at that as, you know, I do a lot of volunteer work. I've always done a lot of volunteer work as well as my sisters and brothers. And that's just something that to me, and I agree with Robin, it's diplomacy was never my strong suit. And it's gotten me in trouble, but I always say, hey, you know what? If you don't want to know, don't ask. If you want me to be honest, I had a boss one time and he had asked me a question in this meeting and I answered the question. I'm thinking, why would he ask me this? So I answered, and this look on his face, he looked so angry. And after the meeting, he said to me, don't ever answer a question if you haven't told me what you were going to say in advance. And I said, well, you asked. If you didn't want to know, you know me, I'm going to tell you. So like, stop doing that. It's weird. I don't know what he expected me to say when he asked me a direct question, but there it was.
How about that? Well, so family and some key colleagues or supervisors have been some great mentors along the way. So it's all great to hear. So you've had a great deal of experience in your career. I was wondering if you could share any challenges that you faced as a female leader along the way. You know, maybe being told you shouldn't really answer directly, even when you're asked a question, clearly was something that had to have been disappointing at the time. But Susanna, did you face any harassment, financial challenges, advancement challenges along your career that you'd be willing to share?
The company that owned the newspaper when I started didn't do a whole lot in terms of helping women and minorities. And the women got together and we started talking. We started having meetings off-site, lunch hour, and we told people that we only wanted you to tell us something that you would be willing to stand up in court and say. I mean, I don't want to hear my boss is mean, he's nasty. Well, okay, so what? But we want specific instances that you would be willing to testify to, because we were figuring we would be heading in that direction. And over the course of a year, we collected so much information. And I went to the publisher's office, the head of the company, and I asked his secretary for a management chart, an organizational chart. And she said, oh, sure, here you go. And I said, oh God, it's like gold. So I took that organizational chart, and at our next meeting, we just filled in the names and the races of the people, and all at the top, white guys, everything at the bottom, women and minorities. And we used to post minutes of our meetings in the women's restrooms because management would never see them there. And for over a year, we posted the minutes of all of our meetings and the dates, times of the next meetings. They never knew. When we announced that we wanted to talk to them, we went to the State Human Relations Commission. She called the publisher, and the publisher said, what? What? And it was a shock to them. And she said, you know, there are 4 women here who represent a larger group, and I'm inviting you to come and speak with them, and we'll set a date, and these women will be told that they just tell their supervisor, I have a meeting, I'm leaving. And the supervisors, you will tell all your supervisors not to say anything, challenge them, stop them, whatever. Well, it was amazing. They were stunned when we showed them and we told them, and they were like, what? What? And, you know, ultimately we did file a class action lawsuit, but the day after, or the day that we filed the suit, the company was sold to Gannett. So we retracted the lawsuit, and the first day that the Gannett manager were on site, I called the publisher and I said, you don't know me, but you will. And there are some women you need to talk to, just saying. And he sat down with us and for 4 hours listened to everything, took notes, said, I don't know how long it'll take to get this fixed, but I guarantee you it'll be fixed. And it was, the first one to go was the HR director.
Wow.
But it was interesting, and it was, but those were really difficult days, because basically our pay, and this is what I kept saying to them, our pay ultimately is going to be reflected in Social Security somewhere down the line. And the fact that we spent several years being underpaid, and underpaid versus the males who were doing the exact same work, is a handicap all the way through your life, basically. I mean, it's like holding you underwater until they're letting you go. So it was, but it's been quite interesting.
So they did respond and made appropriate changes?
They certainly did, yes.
That's really great to hear. Really great to hear. Thank you.
And they backed up the women. They backed us up. I got promoted over a guy that I had trained, and he announced that he was leaving, that he couldn't really work for me. And so he quit. And a week later, he came back, and the publisher called me and he said, I think you should know that your former guy decided to come back. And I told him, no, we accepted your resignation. Good luck. Yay.
Wow. Oh, what a great success story. Congratulations for being there, taking the lead, getting the women together, and then in the end, having success with the management team.
Well, it was a whole group of women that, you know, we
Yeah.
all sort of worked together, but it was interesting. It was interesting times.
And this probably, would you say this was the 90s when this was happening?
No, this was in the 70s.
Yes. Wow. Wow. That was really great to hear. How about Robin? Have you struggled with anything along the way as you were in your leadership positions and you're with your own company?
Thank you, Pam. I've probably caused others to struggle. Believe me, I bring my social justice hat for all people to whatever it is I'm doing. My biggest my biggest obstacle, I should say, that has I've had to address is based on the fact that I'm a woman, or microaggressions. Sometimes I walk into a company and people say, well, let's, deal with you promptly. I don't want your boss to get upset. And I'll say quietly under my breath, I am the boss. Men talking over me in meetings, and I call them on it and say, I was a good listener while you were speaking. I appreciate it if you afford me the same respect. That's how you handle it. 62% of women in the American workplace report microaggressions, these everyday slights because you are a woman. So microaggressions are very real in our workplace. And I think a better awareness of what microaggressions sound like, look like, not being invited to a gathering because you are a woman, if you are the only woman, and only women, quote unquote, in senior positions really have a hard time. They really shoulder a burden of other women being held to the standard of the other woman, or the perception, of the only woman, I'm sorry, being held to that standard. So those microaggressions are very real for us women.
It sounds like you had the confidence to stand your ground, but it still has to be emotionally draining when you go into these circumstances and either expect it to happen, or that you do have to deal with it as part of your coming in to give a presentation or whatever you're looking to do, and you have to have these side issues to deal with before you can move forward. So yeah, that's a good point. I think I could share along the way as I think about it, those kind of harassments or challenges along the way also. Mary, how about you? You're in a primarily. Oh, I'm sorry.
I told Robin that sounded so diplomatic. I used to say to people, "Hey, were my lips moving still?" Because I thought they were. If they weren't, I'm wrong.
Mary, how about you? So you've been in a pretty male-dominant field for a good part of your career. What have you seen?
Well, first, I just want to make note, there is a similarity between the three of us. I always say, do you want my filtered response or my unfiltered response? And the same thing, my mom raised me saying, if you're asking me, make sure you're prepared for my honest answer, or don't ask me. So it's funny that the three people on this call are very matter of fact. We speak our mind, and we raise ourselves to that challenge. I feel people like Robin and Suzanne have paved the way to make it a little bit easier. Each generation, I think, paves the way for the next group of women. We're nowhere near where we need to be. I understand that. There is nowhere. I see in my career in the past when I worked is I was the first female operations director, and I had to fight for that promotion. I always seemed that I always had to fight for my promotion, fight for my title, and especially as Robin and Suzanne say, fight for your pay. We don't realize, especially as you get to the point of your retirement ages, that really affects your Social Security. And people don't think of that in the mindset. What I have found, that still hasn't really changed. We made a little blip in the road here with titles, C-suites for women, for pay grades, but I really see we're still in that predominantly male held roles. I am in a predominantly male role. I was telling Pam, I think there's 200 RMs. I don't even know what the small percentage are women. But what I love about Fulton is that the women who head almost every realm in the executive VP are all women. So that's really interesting that at least for a bank, we have a lot of women in those executive VP roles. I think today, though, back in the day, I don't remember hearing the words inclusivity. I don't remember hearing the word transparency. So I think things are more rise to the top quicker. And I think the younger generation, I just had a conversation with a 30-some-year-old, and she said, I think the difference is we talk about it more. We try to bring it to the forefront quicker. It's not like hush, hush, this is a man's world. We're going to be vocal and we want to be heard. So I think that the challenges are all still there across the board. And I truly think, unfortunately, it's going to take several more years or even a decade to get it where it should be.
And that's just criminal. It really is. I mean, I was reading a column the other day, and the guy was saying that he only has one lifetime. I can't say, well, my grandchildren will have it better, and say, oh, that's so comforting to know that. Well, no, I'd like to have the same access to everything that everyone else does. And I know that for many years, I was told, and my female colleagues, we were all told, well, it's going to take time. We're just at the beginning of this. Well, it never took time for the white guys. I mean, seriously, probably shouldn't say that, but I did. Okay, you can edit that out. But it just, I find it galling. And
so I wanted to get your thoughts on something else. Suzanne, you were the first female chair of the Chamber's board. Recently, the CEO and founder of an audio social media company posted a photo of herself on LinkedIn with the words, "I am a female founder," and crossed off female. The comments that came from that post were very mixed, and I just welcome your thoughts on recognizing gender and accomplishments. How does that ring for you? And I'm going to ask each of you, but Suzanne, to say that you were the first female chair, how does that resonate with you? Or hearing that somebody's the first in whatever, is that a good thing for us, or does that potentially hold us back?
I think that the more women try to shroud who they are when they accomplish something, the harder it is for the next woman to get there. I mean, you think about, and I think about how damaging all of this discrimination has been to the world. I mean, you look at the two women who won the Nobel Prize for the RNA, for the CRISPR gene editing system, which is what is allowing them to make these vaccines so quickly. Two women, two youngish women, Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuelle Carpentier. But how many of them never got started, never had a chance, because they never saw a woman accomplish something like that? So to me, yeah, I know a lot of women who used to sign their letters so that they didn't want the person to know that they were a woman, because they felt they got more respect if the person assumed they were a man. But to me, it just sort of diminishes who you are when you have to say, well, I'm a female founder. Well, obviously you are, but don't downplay that, because we need to see more powerful, assertive women taking charge. That's my feeling.
Robin, what about you? What do you think about that?
I think that denoting that you are a woman is a badge of honor.
Yes.
Don't let people get away with saying, I don't see you as a woman, because if you don't see me as a woman, you don't see me.
It's like I'm colorblind.
That's right.
I'm colorblind. Who are you?
You don't see me as a person or a member of a group that has a history, a member of a group that has contributed to the United States in every way, a member of a group that has contributed to the world in every way. So I think it is perfectly fine to denote with pride that you are a woman when it comes to your accomplishments.
Mary?
I have to agree with both of them. I think it's also laying the groundwork for the future women. It's also when you mentioned something about the vaccine. How many little girls don't even know that two women did that? We have such a lack of young women in the STEM field, and if they see these two strong women who hopefully eradicated the COVID-19 virus, there's hope. And I think if you're authentic, we are women. We can't change that. And I want you to respect me because I am a woman, and because me, Mary, a woman, adds value. And I think we need to add value, but also I think it's just so important. I'm all about the next generation, that they see that they can add value no matter what their career choices are.
And that they should be proud of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and not take a back seat to somebody who's doing the same thing as they are, but not as good. Usually they are.
Not allow others and never allow others
Right.
to force you into a backseat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
All great messages. Thank you. So you all share the common position of having served or are serving as the Chamber of Commerce board chair. And so I'd like to go from, again, first to current, and just a little bit about Suzanne, Robin, and Mary, your experience. Mary, yours is fresh, but in 2021, and looking at Suzanne back in 2020 and Robin in the 2000s as well. Just would you share with us what that role was like? Would you recall that serving as the chair of the board as a female leader? Suzanne?
I had been on the board for a number of years before that. So I knew all of the other people on the board, and it wasn't, it wasn't like, whoa, look, a woman. It was like, we were all friends. We all went out and drank and stuff like that. So we had a relationship, and, there was mutual respect. So I never really felt that they were looking at it as something extraordinary. I think that I was the publisher of the newspaper, and I was an executive just as they were. So I don't think that they looked at me differently. I did, in the newspaper, when I first came here as the publisher of the newspaper, there were a lot of people in the community who were not that thrilled. And I was told more than once that this community doesn't need uppity women. Whatever that is. So just keep your opinions to yourself. Good luck. But so I never really felt anything other than I was a part of the organization of the Chamber of Commerce at the time. So I didn't really look at it as, well, I'm the first. I don't think I even knew that. But so it never really factored into it, because I had relationships with most of the people on the board. And at that time there were a number of women on the board too. So it wasn't like I was like this woman and all these men were there with me. So it felt kind of seamless to me.
Robin, how about, was your experience similar, or did you have a different one 4 years later?
It was similar in as much as I served on the board when Suzanne was on the board, and then when Suzanne became chairperson. So I too knew members of the board. And when I was tapped on the shoulder and asked if I wanted to chair, I would be lying if I said that a point of pride is the color of my skin. And when I was on the board, or I should say when I was on the chair, when I was the chairperson, strategic thinking, that might be, Mary, why there was a 20-year lag, because I beat them into the ground, all board members, to think strategically. And I looked at my service to the board as a franchise. I looked at the board as a franchise. I know we are a nonprofit, but I brought some of those tenets of a for-profit, some of them with me, such as having a strategic plan. What are our goals and our objectives? How do we measure success? And so I think I shook things up a little bit, because for some people it was a different way of thinking, but everyone on that board stepped up, stepped to the plate. I had support without fatigue. And I went on to serve 2 terms. So, you know, it was a great thing. It was great.
Well, I thank you both for all that you have done, because the thing that I've gotten to see starting here in 2012 is that it truly is a community of different folks on the board, different size companies, different industries, and everyone truly did get along. And I think, again, my guess is you may have been a little rough on them, Robin, but I think that it just may have been that the ladies that followed you on the board, their businesses or their times just didn't allow them to serve, and not that they were never asked or had the opportunity should they have wanted it. So I am thrilled to be able to work with my friend and our now current female board chair, Mary. So I would see if you wanted to share any thoughts on how the board is today and being the female leader of the Chamber's board of directors.
Well, I agree with Robin, because as Pam has seen, I hit the ground running. Like, my expectations are much higher. Not that a male's expectations are different. I think women, we're wired differently. Our brain is different. So, you know, I want everybody to step up to the plate, as you said. I want everybody to give something. I don't want your boardship to be a figurehead. I am all about giving back. I am all about community. I have been involved with the chamber for 19 years. So prior to that, I've always been a chamber member. So I think it was seamless. I know everybody. Everybody knows I say it the way it is. I'm professional, but sometimes I don't have a filter. But I expect everybody to take part. And also, my challenge is for this term, and possibly, like you said, a possible second term, Robin, you never know, is to get more people involved in community. I've been told that sometimes I have a Pollyanna thought about myself. Like, I believe that when COVID is over, sense of community is really going to come back strong. And I believe that part of that community is that you need to volunteer. You need to give back, be part of your community. People always say things, but if you don't step up, you can't change things. And that is my part of being, you know, my role is to get more people involved, but also, as we talk about women in history, is to show the younger women who are on the board, you can balance it all. I know I hate that, what Pam just brought up. Oh, well, I have too much to do. Oh, I'm married. Oh, I have kids. Well, if we all made excuses, there would be no changes in the world. So they're going to have their hands full, Robin and Suzanne, because I'm constantly emailing and saying, can you do this? Can you do this? And they're probably thinking this is going to be a long year.
Good for you, Mary.
Well, and for me, it's great to have the leader of the leadership team in our corner, to know that there is the support coming from the board. So, Mary, I'll ask you this, and as a chamber, we are very strong small businesses. So when we look at our numbers, of our about 700 members now, probably 70% of them or so are 10 and under employees. They're the heart and soul of this area. We have one, I guess, probably Fortune 50 company that's a member of the chamber. But I read a statistic just recently, and it caught my interest specifically because, Suzanne, of your background, the Katharine Graham, publisher of the Washington Post, was the first Fortune 500 CEO in 1963. Today, 16.9% of Fortune 500 CEOs are females. And I just wondered if you just touch a little bit on what you think that is preventing that number from being larger. So Mary, do you want to start?
Sure. I think women tend to manage and lead differently. And I think that could be a little bit of an issue in the bigger companies. We have empathy. We look at everything holistically, I feel. Lots of times I don't feel our male counterparts. I have actually had to mentor some of the people that I was grooming for management positions, and they were male and they lacked empathy. And they're like, can you work on giving him some empathy? I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can just give him some empathy, but we'll work on it. And that was a challenge. But I also feel personally that you need to embrace your skill set, and to communicate your strengths to your supervisors, managers. And sometimes I think we do get overlooked in these bigger companies and bigger positions because we either don't speak up, or when we speak up, we're drowned out by our counterparts. So you have to be a professional pest. That's what you need to be. You need to be, as a woman, a professional pest. You need to be heard. And then you need to discuss how and what the plan is. And I think, Robin, like you just said, strategic plan. I think you as a woman too, you need to have your own personal strategic plan of how you're going to move forward and get to the next step. Because honestly, if we continue to wait, we'll still be waiting a decade from now.
Exactly.
Robin, how about you?
I have 3 reasons why I believe that we don't have more women CEOs. One of the reasons, number 1, is weak succession planning. I heard what you said, Pam, absolutely, that, a lot of our chamber members have very small companies. But there are some chamber members who have more than 50 employees as well. And so these companies are going to, when they implement or they start thinking about their succession planning, they need to put women in the mix. All right. Another reason is women need both male and female advocates for senior positions. As women should advocate. Just because I'm there, I need to reach back. Men need to advocate for women because, as Suzanne was pointing out right now, and your statistic as well, because if they're, it's over 80, well over in the 80 percentile of folks who are not women as CEOs. So men right now, they have the audience and the power to recommend women and to be in solidarity with women. The third reason I think there are not a significant amount of women CEOs is that the culture. Okay, every organization needs to examine their organizational culture. And that hurts. But that's how we grow. Is my culture committed from the bottom to the top, to bring women into the workplace? Into the C-suite, senior management position. So those 3 reasons: succession planning, advocacy by both men and women, and examination of the corporate culture is part of what is going to change. There's no one gift wrap answer. It has many spokes.
Definitely good things for everyone to keep in mind, I'm sure. Suzanne, any thoughts on?
I agree about, I think Mary pointed out that women operate differently. I think we're much more collaborative than men. And I think that's one of the things that it seems to almost diffuse the power, but it's really, we look at, here's the job that needs to be done. You were hired to be this person with this skill set. So I'm going to deputize you to make sure that that happens. And we work together as teams a lot better. I think that women have to stand up for other women. And I also, one of the things that I do, I'm on a number of boards, and I'm on the Women's Animal Center board, America's first animal shelter, founded by a woman in 1869. But we, when we were interviewing new auditing firms, and the first thing that I asked these people that would come in and they would have their presentations, and I would say, do you have any women on your board? And they're like, what? What? Do you have any women executives in your company? What? Because that's important to me. It's important to us. And if they would say no, we'd say, well, maybe you better grow some, because that's what we're looking for. And basically, if women don't speak up when you have the opportunity, when you can make choices like that, when you do have the floor, you have to do it. You have to use it and work to make sure that men who sometimes don't even realize, people come in to make a presentation to the Women's Animal Center about their auditing skills, and they bring in all these guys in suits, and they're sitting there saying, we'll take care of this for you, ladies. I know that you've got we know numbers, and I don't see any women in this group. Do you have women that work for you? Oh yeah, we got women in the office. Yeah, I bet you do. Okay, bye. But we have to demand better from the companies that we patronize. From, when I go in the grocery store, if I'm talking to someone, I say, like, who's the manager here? Is it a woman? Why not? Most of the women are cashiers or working there, but the managers are men. And I'm not a good one to take out to a restaurant, because I'm like, who's the chef? Who owns this place? Because I want to make sure that we patronize and applaud women who are in charge, because it's not like women are taking over. It's like there are so few, and it's only gonna get to be more when more women stand up and say, I demand better from this company.
I agree. So the more conversation we have, the more awareness that we take in noticing those kind of things and asking the questions, certainly will continue to help. Oh, great. Thank you. So when I was working, I never heard the term work-life balance until recently. It was just, you did what was expected and you figured it out when you got home. I never had the opportunity to just say easily that I had to take a day or a week or whatever off to manage my children. So it seems to be more of a term that's come, and thankfully women leaders now have that ability to kind of work that in, I think, into their leadership and to their work, their day. But I'd like to just ask your thoughts. Did you have a similar situation, Mary, that was there work-life balance for you when you were starting out and the kids were little?
I laugh at that. That is just too comical. I don't think I've ever heard it in my early times of my career. I also heard, though, a lot, well, you can't have it all. That's my favorite thing when you're a woman in a managerial or an executive position where you can't have it all because you're going to miss something, which I did. And you do have to take that and understand that you are going to miss maybe some momentum in your life, with your kids because you are at work. But today, I think it speaks volumes, but it scares me. So statistically, I don't know if you've heard this, that through this pandemic, more women, I think it's 30%, had to leave their jobs to stay at home. And I'm not talking just about your hourly employee. I'm talking about executives, higher management, because they raise their hands and they're like, well, what am I going to do? My kids are at home. I have to homeschool now, or I have elderly parents that have to be taken care of. So it still amazes me as we sit here and have this conversation that 30% of women left their jobs because they had to have a balance with their home to take care of people. We're talking all these years ago. I do remember, though, when I had both of my children, and now this would never have happened. And when you talk about speaking up, when I had Juliet, I turned around and says, well, I accrued all my PTO and all this and whatever you got back then. It was way more than what I think you got now. I said, I'm taking 6 months off. And they were just like looking at me like, you're doing what? And I said, yep, I worked really hard for you for the past several years. I have a strategic plan in place of who will take care of things while I am gone, but I am a good employee and I'm taking this 6 months off. And you know what? I took those 6 months off. And you know, but that again goes back to speaking up. I think work-life balance can be the cost of your ambition. And people really feel that the younger women need this, they need to achieve it. And I think that will be our next change. I think the pandemic pushed us into it. I have been working at home now with 2 dogs, nobody else at home, for over a year now. It works. It's saving the company probably millions of dollars across the footprint. But what happens next? So to me, I have several people coming to me and saying, well, I really like to work at home. I like to do this. I said, well, then you need to speak up. You need to come up with a plan of how your work-life balance will work. What is your strategic plan to move through 21, 22? Can you be ambitious, be a professional, rise up in your company and still have that work-life balance? I think that's going to be a question moving forward in the next year.
Yeah.
Pandemic definitely did throw a wrinkle in all of that, or a new way to look at all of these things that are of concern. Robin, how about you? How was work-life balance for you during your career?
Oh, I started my professional career in 1980. Okay, so everybody's on, oh my God, how old is she? But nevertheless.
Younger than me, Robin.
That's okay, Suzanne. But nevertheless, work-life balance was never even whispered. And like Mary, I had been with my employer for 10 years before my husband and I had our daughter. And because of inflexibility, they stuck to their policy. I asked for time off without pay, and they sent me a letter that said, if you don't come back on this day, after your maternity leave, you will be fired for insubordination. And 4 months later, I resigned, went to another company, which wasn't much better. And so with me, there was no work-life balance. I mean, I left corporate in 1994. I had enough, and children or husbands and families and aging parents were all consigned to invisibility. They are invisible. We don't want to see them, touch them, smell them, or hear about them. So I am delighted that the law has changed, because when I was going through it, there was no family medical leave. There wasn't any. You were at the mercy of the company. And some people fared better than others, but again, it's an obstacle that you don't let stop you.
So true. So when my children were born, we lived in New Jersey, but I actually worked in Pennsylvania. And the New Jersey laws for maternity leave were so much more lenient and supportive. But because I worked in Pennsylvania, my employer made it clear that I was to follow the Pennsylvania law. And again, as you said, you're expected to be back, and you will do what you are supposed to do, or we'll find somebody else to do it. So yeah, you know what? I needed the job. I liked the job. I figured it out, but certainly would love to have been in that position now, where there is a little bit more benefits that have been put in place for us. So, so Suzanne, how about you? You had I guess a decade or so ahead of Robin's time starting.
I do not have children. I have a very, very supportive husband, and through my career, I did get moved several times, and he had to leave jobs he loved and move to where I was, and he did. And I mean, it was extraordinary when I was working, but but he did. We moved from Delaware to Virginia, Virginia to New Jersey, New Jersey to here. And it was, you know, and it was always like, okay, bye. And he picked up and we moved, and, you know, he's been very supportive. He's like a modern guy that I happened to have married in 1976.
So you had your own support system that you didn't have to, that it allowed you to have that kind of work-life balance. You could move to where the career was for you, knowing that he would support you, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great guy.
He is.
So I guess if we look now to the future, I had two other questions that I wanted to just get your thoughts on. The first being, what do you think would be the biggest challenge for women in business in the next decade? From all of your experience, what do you think that women starting out are going to be facing in the next decade? Anything new, continuation? Suzanne, what do you think?
I think that women are going to have to confront the fact that a lot of men are going to be very resentful for having the pandemic over. And women are going to be flooding the workplace again. And they need to stand up for themselves. And I'm afraid that they're going to have to really start from behind the starting line again. But I think that business is changing so rapidly, and computerization is changing the workplace so much. And I think that that will be both an opportunity and a liability, depending on how flexible and how willing people are to change the way they do things. And I think the ability to be more mobile, to be more flexible, those are going to be keys to success. And knowing what you're doing. There's that.
Robin, how about you? What do you think the challenges for the next generation of women leaders will be?
Getting those who are not on board, whether they're women or men, to get used to the idea of shared power. Reflecting back on the question earlier this afternoon, why aren't there more CEOs? Come on, folks, let's just face it. It's power, shared power. Power concedes nothing without a fight. And so in the 21st century, or in the next 5-10 years moving forward, women are going to have to work hard with their male allies to get others in organizations to digest and accept the thought of shared power.
I also think, and this, Robin, you may know more about this also, I think that the issue of social justice is going to be paramount. I just don't think that any company can afford, I mean, not that it's because it's the right thing to do, but because I don't think that many companies will succeed anymore by being ignorant of the realities of the pay structures that they have in place.
Exactly.
There is no reason in the world why individuals who are working full-time can't afford to take care of themselves. I mean,
yes. Agreed. Totally.
Mary, your thoughts on the...
Well, I still think it's going to come down to, as a combination, it's equality. Equality in the workplace will continue to be a struggle as we are re-entering the workforce at 30% who had to leave. I am hopeful and optimistic that they're not going to have to start at the finish line. Hopefully they can start where they left and won't be penalized, because that would then add a layer of, we have changed. You know, because you had to take a leave doesn't mean that you have to be penalized, especially for something historical like this. And I think when we add in the layer of technology and working from home and being flexible, then you're going to have to add that third layer in of balancing work and home. Because I see a lot of us who now work from home on 3 different screens are down here, you know, at 7:30 in the morning, but then let me go check my email at 10 o'clock at night. So we're really going to have strategic thinking about these are my work hours to really have that work-life balance if technology is going to enter into our home.
So the last question for all of you today, what advice would you give to a young woman starting out in business, based on all of your experience, what you've seen, what you've endured, the successes you've had, the struggles? What would you tell a young woman as your advice? Mary?
This might sound strange, but I would tell somebody starting out to get 2 mentors in business, a male and a female mentor. That will give you a balanced approach of what's going on in the company, especially if it's a mentor in the company you work with. That person can help guide you, help you grow professionally, but also I think there's such a fear of failure today. You have to fail to grow. You're gonna fail throughout your career. And I think a lot of women today feel we have to fight, we have to charge through. You're gonna fail. And I think if you recognize that those failures will get you to the next step of where you need to be, it makes you acknowledge that you need to change some things when you fail. That's how I look at failures, that you got to realign, strategically plan, this is where I wanna be. And my biggest thing, and all of my mentors and my boss, who's about to retire at 70, always puts this in my head. Always keep learning, as knowledge is your key to success. So every day, if you learn one thing, then I feel you've had a successful day.
Robin, your thoughts?
Yes, me. Oh,
Sorry, Robin? Oh, it doesn't matter.
go ahead, Robin.
Okay. The advice I would give a young woman today is never let anyone else define you. Never give up. Never, ever give up. Just like Mary said, you are going to have failures. All right. And learn from those failures, those missteps. Every runner stumbles. Use your own agency and don't let anybody else define you.
Right.
Yeah.
I think knowing who you are, knowing what you're worth, and not backing down are the keys. And I think it takes personal courage to do that. Because a lot of times you're in a room with people who are kind of hostile, but you have to be courageous and confident and know your worth, what you're asking for.
Thank you, ladies. This was just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to have the three of you with this chat today. It really means a lot to me personally, and I can't wait to share all of this with members of the chamber, to be able to see the ladies that led this organization over the last 20 years. So again, as I said, I do hope